hostile UAPs, and an insane law that would make it impossible for people to control appliances inside their own homes. We're going to talk about all of this and much more in today's video. I want to start things off with the insane congressional hearing about UFOs.
About a week later, another patrol reported a light over the ocean, behaving erratically. Believing it might be an unannounced aircraft, they declared an emergency, and an armed response force responded. Before the forces could arrive, the object descended and either landed or hovered on our flight line, and then took off again at impossible speed. The witnesses to this event were threatened and intimidated afterward. They were told to keep quiet and think about what they were reporting. After that, things did get quiet.
Now look, you should never trust any of these testimonies without solid proof, but that does not mean we should just ignore this issue. Don't forget that our Congress is spending a whole lot of time investigating this stuff, so let me just give you some perspective that you won't get from the legacy media.
You'll see those files that I shared with you. They did find stuff. There was an incident in October of 1982 over an ICBM base where UFOs popped up, was observed over this base where the missiles are pointed at us, United States. These UFOs perform incredible maneuvers. They split apart, they fuse back together, they'd appear and disappear. And right at the end of this 4-hour period, the launch control codes for the ICBMs lit up. Something entered the correct codes. The missiles were fired up and ready to launch, and they could not shut it down. The Russian officers were panicking. The UFOs they disappeared. The launch control system goes back to normal. Colonel Sokolov and his team came in, took the thing apart, could not figure out what it was. It wasn't a power surge or EMPs or some of the baloney excuses that our country has given.
Now, the man you just saw is George Knapp, who is the most popular UFO reporter in this country. He is the guy who pretty much brought the Area 51 story to the mainstream media.
Hello and welcome to On the Record. Flying saucers, extraterrestrials, monsters from outer space. The government has been telling us for years that they're not real. They're weather balloons, or swamp gas, or reflections from the sun, or the ravings of lunatics.
He was also responsible for those Tic Tac UFO clips that came out some years ago.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
However, he has also made a huge career by becoming the face of all the UFO and paranormal communities.
It just recalculates how likely it is there are alien civilizations in our solar system or our cosmos.
Likely?
He popularized Skinwalker Ranch by co-authoring an ultra-popular book, Hunt for the Skinwalker.
How the government program OSAP was created directly because George wrote this book about a little place called Skinwalker Ranch, where the government was studying this property.
He's also a close friend of Robert Bigelow, who made hundreds of millions of dollars working closely with the Pentagon and also owned the Skinwalker Ranch.
The one name I do want to bring up in this session, though, is Robert Bigelow. So looking into the idea of crash retrievals and reverse engineering, while OSAP, that program, was active, the DIA's contractor, Robert Bigelow of Las Vegas, made a bold attempt to acquire physical proof of UFO crashes.
I think by now you can see how George has a clear incentive to create hysteria around the UFOs. Also, you can't really verify all of his stories. For instance, this potentially world-ending incident he talks about took place in Ukraine in 1982, but other than George or his Soviet source, no one has publicly verified it. There are, of course, stories of UFOs targeting and deactivating U.S. intercontinental missiles as well, and one such incident allegedly took place at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana in 1967. However, there are also some wild stories that simply sound dumb. For instance, the CIA apparently found a confidential report about a UFO incident that took place in Siberia. It explains how the Soviet soldiers fired on a saucer-shaped UFO with rockets and brought it down. Then a bunch of human-shaped aliens with big hands and black eyes came out of it and fused into a ball of light that exploded, and anyone who was touched by this light turned to stone. I'm gonna let you decide if that sounds real or not. Now, as for attacking these UFOs, apparently a US drone fired a Hellfire missile at it, and the object kept going as if unharmed.
Okay, while this is still rolling, Mr. Nusatelli, real quick yes or no answers. Are you aware of anything in the government, United States government arsenal that can split a Hellfire missile like this?
No.
And do whatever blob thing it did and then keep going? Nothing?
Nothing.
All right, how about you, Chief Wiggins?
Nothing to my knowledge, ma'am.
Now, this is no joke. We've already seen videos of such orbs near US bases. The question we need to ask is this. Is this some top secret US tech that we're testing in the field without telling our troops, or is it controlled by some other country and they're just messing with us? I'm not saying it couldn't be extraterrestrial, but this video also came from some Pentagon source, and the Pentagon just doesn't have a good history of being truthful on this issue. Now, what's wild is that they even claim to know who has the UFO tech.
Who are the contractors that have this material, the corporations?
Well, one of them is Lockheed. And I'll tell you, I mean, I'm not saying Lockheed's the bad guys. They're doing what they were asked to do.
Sure.
They have lied about this because that's what they're supposed to do. But Lockheed would be one. There's a list I can give you, Congressman. Some of the big ones, the usual suspects.
Okay, thank you.
Look, Lockheed is probably the shadiest company on the planet, but they also have a history of working on ultra-secret US military projects. So George might not be completely wrong here. Lockheed might be running these orbs, but of course, we have no way of confirming that. Now, they didn't just talk about orbs. One insider also mentioned another kind of flying craft.
From 2011 to 2013, I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, conducting 24-hour operations via manned and unmanned aerial vehicles for Special Operations Forces in the global war on terror. During the summer of 2012, my team was on standby for weather, and I returned to my barracks on base, and at approximately 01:30, I saw an approximately 100-foot equilateral triangle take off from near the NASA hangar on the base. The craft interfered with my telephone, did not have any sound, and the material it was made of appeared fluid or dynamic. I was under this triangular craft for a few minutes, and then it rapidly ascended to commercial jet level in seconds, displaying zero kinetic disturbance, sound, or wind displacement.
Look, this kind of testimony does sound pretty exciting if you're interested in finding the origin of some of these strange objects. However, the problem is that this isn't the first time Congress has heard these wild testimonies.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And despite all these witnesses, we have heard nothing and received no real proof for any of these claims. To obtain such evidence that can prove or debunk these claims, these congressmen will need to go after the Pentagon and defense contractors like Lockheed Martin. But that will never happen, since many of these lawmakers rely on the same contractors to get elected. So once again, this seems like a distraction tactic to make us forget about the real issues plaguing the world around us. For instance, did you know that in Ohio, they want to pass an insane bill that will stop you from controlling the electricity usage around your own house? That's right, Bill 427 will basically give the utility companies the authority to control your thermostat without your permission.
Hey Ohio, Representative Kloffenstein wants you to give up your AC for AI. Representative Kloffenstein has introduced House Bill 427, introducing a new energy program. This program is voluntary, but it could increase rates for everyone. For the customers that participate, the electric utility may take actions to reduce the customer's load at peak times, such as increasing the temperature on the customer's AC or reducing the temperature of their hot water utilities or cycling other appliances. Klopfenstein says publicly that the purpose of this bill is to attract data centers for AI. He wants the industry to know that if data centers for AI come to Ohio, they'll willingly shut off Ohioans' AC to accommodate them. While entering into this program would be voluntary, it has the ability to affect the rates for all of us. And if energy rates get so crippling high, then people will have to enter into this voluntary program just to afford their electricity to begin with.
To me, it looks like yet another way to control our lives, and that's why I cannot see why someone would voluntarily enroll in it. Now, I want to end this video by mentioning some good news, especially since it concerns our health.
Today, the FDA is taking action to rein in misleading direct-to-consumer drug ads. For far too long, these ads have distorted the doctor-patient relationship and have created artificial demand for medications, regardless of their clinical appropriateness. In recent years, the FDA has increasingly been lax in its enforcement approach. It used to be that the FDA would send more than 100 warning letters each year, and misleading ads were rare. But over time, enforcement waned. In 2023, the FDA sent just one warning letter, and last year it was 0. Well, it's a new day. The FDA is sending approximately 100 enforcement action letters today, and thousands of letters warning the industry, including online pharmacies, who have increasingly been promoting drugs with no mention of side effects at all.
Look, we already know that pharma companies spend a ton of money, nearly a quarter of their budget in fact, on advertising their products to American people. However, only about 33% of these ads talk about the harm and the side effects, which is mind-boggling. So I'm glad that they're forcing the companies to talk about these side effects as well. However, I really hope that they're thinking about banning these ads altogether. Pretty much no other country allows this kind of advertising, and yet we treat these life-changing drugs like any other commercial product. The whole practice of advertising them seems dystopian, and we need to end this ASAP. I'm really interested to find out what you think about this whole UFO hearing. Also, what do you think about this law to control your thermostat? Share your thoughts with everyone in the comments down below. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one.